that's one problem down. So those are the numbers I was able to come up with. Looking at the documentation, if you start to then use their API, you might find that in order to do anything with their API, you need some sort of access token. And this is kind of, in some sense, it's very similar to some of the stuff we talked in third semester. Remember, we talked about authorization and authentication. And to do that, we had to come up with these. We came up with these JWT tokens, and kind of talked about how to do that with middleware and stuff. So it's the same kind of thing. That's what's happening with their API. Is basically you need a JWT token to get in. There are two different kinds of JWT tokens that they're using. There's either an application level JWT token, or there's a user-based JWT token. So the application one is just, hey, this is for your application. You don't need any sort of user info. You just need that pair, the client ID and the client secret, to get to that number. Unfortunately, those two numbers by themselves aren't stuff that you can immediately just go log into. You actually have to take those numbers, do some processing, and make a kind of an authentication or a login request to their server in order to actually then be able to go further. So step one is really just to take those tokens, go authenticate, and then you can come back and actually hit the browse API, which is what you're looking at. So there is some processing and stuff that has to happen there in order for you to work. But recognize on the application level, you don't actually need any user input to get an application token. The other kind of token that you can get is a user token, user auth token, and that requires them to actually provide a username and password that they use to log in to eBay itself, and requires a little bit more workaround for that. So there's two different kinds of tokens depending on what you need. The gist of it is, like, the application level, and this is just so we're clear, this is the way that most APIs are. The application token will get you into anything that's like public facing. So like searching for products actually turns out like that's a public facing. If you want to search the database for things that are on sale or get details about those things, that's public facing. So you just need an application token to do that. If you're going to do something that's more like you have to be logged into a particular user, then you need a user token. So that covers things like if you want to be able to work with their shopping cart at all, if you want to be able to see their past orders, if you want to make an order, if you want to put something up for sale or place a bid, all of those kind of things require you to have a user token. But what we're doing for this exercise, all I'm asking you to do is browse that, use the browse API to get public information, which means that all you need is an application token. Does that help a little bit to suss out the documentation there a little bit? So that means there's some things you need and some things you don't need because of what we're doing right now. Okay. I will say I kind of messed with their OAuth setup. They have a link here. You may have pursued this. The link, they say link to their OAuth client library for Android. Just by a show of hands, I'm going to put a little poll in here. So thumbs up if you did try that OAuth client library at all. or thumbs down if you didn't try it. Okay. So this is, if you've looking through the documentation, they recommend it. I will say I tried this library, their client library, and I could not get it to work. In fact, there are a good number of errors in the code example they give. So like there's an issue here because this should be implementation. There's some issue in the code example that they provide here, and there's even an issue in that code example as well. So I had some issues just trying to use the code that was given, and even after I sorted some of those things out, I wasn't able to figure out how to use this to get an application level token. It kind of seems to me like this library is really only set to get user level tokens, and obviously there should be some way to use it to get an application token, but I could not figure out for the life of me how to get an application token out of it. So I would, as far as building this project, I would not recommend using that library, suffice it to say. If we want to use user tokens, we might come back and look at it. But in terms of generating an application token, I don't think it's the right way to go. Cool. So what does that mean as our alternatives? Alternatives, instead of logging in, if I go back to the documentation here, hopefully you can see my screen. I'm going to go back to here and go under the client credentials grant flow. So that's what they call it. The client credentials grant flow is what you're doing if you're just authenticating the application without the user providing you some sort of username and password. So they kind of give you an overview here. They're saying, okay, first you have to make a request to the authorization API. That will then give you back an access token. And then from there, you can make your browse request to the browse API and get back the search results. So that's kind of the overarching process. Where that library was supposed to fit in was helping you with this part, but as I said, I couldn't get it working. I will say that I did some further digging, and rather than using the library that provided, I was able, this morning when I was playing around with it, I was able to actually get it to authenticate. I actually was able to make the necessary request and get back an auth token. There are a few stumbling blocks that I got into along the way as far as how to make that happen, but I was able to get there using the information on this page. So if you're all at all curious about how did that make that work, a large part of the information of how to do that is here, and effectively it's just you have to make an HTTP request, a post request to this URL with some headers, and with some body, some post data that you're posting in the body. So you can do that. I will say that when I got this working with HTTP URL client, or the URL connection class, I got it working with that. It was not easy. The code is kind of hacky, and I'm kind of reticent to share that code because there's still some outstanding issues with trying to debug it and figure out how to do all that. So I think I'd much rather show you how to do that process with retrofit than with the HTTP URL connection class itself. Cool. So all that being said, kind of looking at the authentication bit, what I think I'm going to do is I'm working towards getting a version of that works and authenticates with retrofit. I think I'm actually going to end up just giving you guys a code example and a class that can do that authentication bit that you can just kind of pick up and drop in. And we'll talk about how that works and the code in it, but it's a sizable enough piece, and there's enough new pieces in there that I think it's better to just, hey, here's kind of the general flow of how I implemented this, and how you would go about basically building your own library to do this authentication. Cool. So that's partway underway. I anticipate having that ready for you to. I don't really have the code at a point where I can show it today, but I suspect I'll be able to show that on Monday. So one thing you can do in the interim, you can hard code. You can get a token from the website itself, and then hard code that token. So let me give what that. Let me go ahead and just go generate one, and I can give you that token here. I want to go ahead and pin this message while I'm thinking about it. But I want to go to Tools and Samples, go to the API Explorer, and I want to here get an OAuth application token. So if I have this token here and I hit execute, you'll see that it comes back with some results. That's kind of the starting point there. So I'm going to go ahead and copy this and give that token. I'm not entirely sure if this token has an expiration time. So if it does expire, please let me know so I can try to give you another one. Oh, and of course it's too long. Okay, so I need to toss that into a text file. There it goes. That did not work as I was hoping it would. Okay, so I need to go to Notepad, and I need to copy that in. Save that to my desktop. And then I can add it here. Upload the file. I need to go to my desktop. Where's my desktop? There. So you should be able to take a look at that token. I had to add it to a TXT file because it was a little bit too long to put into a message. You know how long those JWT tokens get sometimes. So that's something you can use as a bearer token for. It should work for today. Again, I think it may have I'm not sure if it has an expiration date on it, but if it does expire, let me know. You should be able to pass that through the authentication header and try things and try to play around with the API. The method in particular, I think that I had to do to put the header in was set request property. Was how I had to set a header. I'm going to go ahead and put a little code snippet here in Discord as well to just show how I did that. Authorization. bearer. So using HTTP URL connection, I was able to make that work by just adding the token in there where it says auth token. So that'll get you a workaround for the code that you have today. So you can keep moving even though your developer account is not fully approved. Okay. And again, expect a code sample from that by around Monday. I should have something a code example to give you for how to do that authentication process. But that should get you working for now. Any other questions before I kind of go on to the next topic? Any other questions about the project?